If I may ask some questions of Mr Davies, if that's all right, and it's to do with the contingency routes that were established in light of the storm, and of course particular interest in Pwyllgor and Gwdig, but appreciate there were other routes as well. Could you just explain how difficult it was to establish these contingency routes in light of Storm Dara?
There's as I said, there's a ferry berth in Pembroke, there's one in Pwyllgor, and then so I can only comment on Pwyllgor because it's a Stenline port. From the ferry operators and the port owners, the first thing we have to do is make sure that we can physically get ships in. So there's that element, and as a port we are looking, or we have looked already, at the robustness of Pwyllgor and what investment is needed, and we are down that path, and that maybe that's part of the bigger discussion about the robustness of Welsh ports to deal with these in future. Then the next step for us is again, it's a legacy perhaps of Brexit, is that you then need to, previously we could move a ship and start a new route. Now we have to have a liaison with HMRC and with Border Force about opening up through cargo declaration systems. They have to create temporary routes. So that's one aspect. Then the second aspect is, because of the border, then Border Force need to make sure that they have sufficient manpower and things in place before you start moving ships. So that was a step that we never had to do before. We have very good cooperation, and it was new to many parties. But I have to say, through good dialogue, we could adapt fairly quickly, but it was a process that was new to all parties, and we did get through it. But it's something that we have learned that perhaps we didn't appreciate so much previously.
And during the period of the closure of Holyhead, if we just look at Pwyllgor for a moment, how many extra crossings were you able to establish and with that temporary route?
Yeah, so Pwyllgor normally has 2 crossings a day to Ireland. With one ship, we were managed to accommodate a Stenline ferry and an Irish ferry. Both did services to Dublin, so we doubled the number of sailings we could accommodate. I don't have the numbers to hand, but the amount of freight went up immeasurably during that period. So again, perhaps lessons learned for us how we better deal with that, and we already have ideas about investments and robustness. But it was a big step change.
It's interesting as well, because you mentioned the Irish ferries also operated a few crossings out of Pwyllgor. With all of the additional work required to facilitate the additional crossings, did it come to a significant cost? If you're at liberty to say.
Not so much to deal with this current situation. What it did need was considerable goodwill on behalf of staff, which I'm really grateful for. So the ability, it was coming up to Christmas, and we were asking staff, could they relocate to Birkenhead or to Pwyllgor? People have families, people have other commitments, so a lot of goodwill. So for the record, I'd like to thank staff that enabled that. That was probably our biggest initial challenge, was to make sure that we had sufficient manpower to make those changes. But then there are other learnings about how we can make perhaps the infrastructure in Pwyllgor better able to cope with these larger ships, to turn them around into times, and we have plans, and we will move forward with those plans now.
That's very interesting and good to hear as the MP for Pwyllgor and Gwdig.